Today on the Because Family podcast, you can now get a Because Family seminar if you live in the Northeast. Hello and welcome to the Because Family podcast. I'm your host, Michael Prince. I'm so glad you're joining us for this amazingly special announcement episode of the Because Family podcast. I'm going to be interviewing someone on this episode, and so this is just my intro for that, and I just want to intro by announcing that Because Family is expanding. That's right. It's a very exciting time for us as we're still growing and becoming what I feel like God's called this organization and ministry to be. And a major part of that, and you'll learn the story behind it, is John Wilkerson joining us as a Because Family representative to the Northeast. So he's going to be doing seminars and workshops for parents, just like I'm doing in the Midwest. And he's going to be contributing to podcasts and the blog and some things like that. And it's a great story of how I connected with him, as well as how he has connected to Because Family and wanted to become more a part of what we're doing. So without any further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the interview that I did as we explain this with John Wilkerson. So here we go. All right, I'm here with John Wilkerson. John, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, Michael.
Yeah, man. Tell me a little bit to start off. Just introduce yourself to listeners and tell them about your family and just your background and what you do, where you come from.
So I'm John Wilkerson. I have been married for 20 years to my wife, Lisa. We have 7 kids ranging from age 22 all the way down to 10 years old. Actually, probably 23 down to 10. 2 of my kids are graduated from high school. We've homeschooled both of them all the way through, and got another one graduating pretty soon. And I have a tech background. I've been in IT since the 90s. So I've been doing this for a while.
There was IT in the 90s?
There was IT in the 90s, and it was a lot more confusing than it is now.
Well, that's good. That's funny. There was no Googling it then, for sure.
There was no Googling it, and you did not plug something in, and it just worked.
Yeah, no plug and play action. That's funny. Awesome. Well, you do some podcast. Well, I met you through the podcasting world. I think we met through Nobody's Listening, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Through a podcast we both listened to back in the day, and that is now all the what you would call legacy show episodes are in the that story show, I think is what he calls them. They're there still, but anyway, great story. I was on there a couple times. Were you ever a guest host on there?
I was a guest host.
Yeah,
on
I
there
thought you
before,
were. Yeah. So we did that several times. So anyway, we met each other through that, and actually got to stay at your house a little bit. But tell us about the podcast that you do now and have done in the past, just anything you feel like would be relevant.
So when I originally started podcasting back in 2005, I started a podcast called The Jesus Geek. And I basically use that podcast to discuss tech topics, fandom, through the lens of my Christianity, and did interviews and things like that, and had a blast with it. Did that for years. Originally, when I started in 2005, I wanted to do a podcast for homeschoolers, but homeschoolers really were not too keen on podcasting and really weren't learning online a lot at that time. They were still doing books. There were a few people that were maybe doing stuff on CD, but for the most part, homeschoolers were still using books and things like that. So around 2010, I started the Wired Homeschool and started talking about how homeschoolers can use technology and how that can benefit them in their homeschooling their kids. And so besides that, I've had a few other ones. I did one called Compassion 365, where I produced and or recorded an episode every single day of the year for raising money for Compassion International. And I did a podcast called The Sticker Cast, which was kind of a fan podcast for a now defunct website called Get Glue.
Yeah.
I've done a ton of different podcasts. Probably over in total, I've probably recorded close to 1,200 episodes of podcasts since I started. Not consistently one after the other in one podcast, but overall. Right now, I'm still doing the Wired Homeschool on a bi-weekly basis. And I also have a podcast that I'm doing called 10 the Podcast, which is really just a top of mind that I do every 10 days. So it's on the 10th, the 20th, and the 30th of every month. And I just started a new podcast with my daughter, and we are reviewing movies and Netflix series together. And we started out recording for Lost in Space.
Yeah.
So we're having fun with that.
That's good. Yeah, I've watched the first 5 episodes of Lost in Space, so that's good. And I've got that podcast on my list to check out, so I'll be doing that. Well, like I said, we've known each other a while, and we have some experience. We've even met. We're even more than podcasting friends.
Yeah.
You live up in the Northeast, right?
I do.
So that's where, and so you and you've been, we've met in person. We got to go have a coffee together. I lived in your driveway for a week. Was it a week?
Yeah, it was a week. Yeah.
When we were traveling in the motorhome, we lived in your driveway for like a week. My kids and your kids just hit it off immediately and played and had fun. And they still talk about you sometimes. My youngest, the other day, I don't remember why, we were talking about John in the Bible. And Alton, he's 3, he said, "Wait, John Wilkerson?" I said, "No, but that's funny that you said it like that." So that's a name we pull out every now and then. John Wilkerson? So it cracks us up. Anyway, so yeah, our families have met, and we've had to spend some time together. So that's a little bit about your experience with me. But what about, tell us about just your experience with what we've done with BecauseFamily and how we did a little bit even at your church. So.
Yeah. When you started BecauseFamily, I remember thinking, wow, this is something really that's needed. And I don't know, I have tried to kind of spread the same message through my podcast, but it's never really been the focus of the Wired Homeschool. It's just been something that I do as supplementary. As things come up, I might mention them because, of course, it's of interest to parents who are homeschooling. If there are issues that come up, they want to know. And so when I saw that you and your wife decided, hey, we're going to sell almost everything we own and pack ourselves into a box on wheels and travel all over the country, I said, I need to find a way to support them, and invited you to come up to our church here in Saratoga Springs, New York. And
beautiful Saratoga Springs, New York.
Yes, it is beautiful up here.
Beautiful there.
Although it's been raining for a stinking week right now, so it's not been the greatest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still been in the 30s in the morning. Winter won't let go. So.
Oh man, yeah, we just now getting some spring finally in Missouri. So.
Yeah. So you were up here and you did some workshops at our church. You spoke to our youth group. You spoke to the main congregation on Sunday morning, and just your passion for making sure that families understand that these tools, these objects that they're giving to their kids are, I don't want to use the word dangerous, but they can be used dangerously in a dangerous way. A lot of parents don't realize the trouble that their kids can get into with a smartphone or a tablet, because most most parents that are in their 30s or their 40s didn't grow up with an always on internet connection that they could carry around in their pocket. And so even parents who are, say, what we would call millennial parents,
Right.
some of them, even though they had more exposure to the internet than, say, I did, they still don't get it. And so directing parents and showing parents how to raise kids in an environment where their kids are going to be bombarded by values, by information, by images that maybe run counter to their Christian beliefs, or if they're not a Christian, it may run
Sure.
counter to just their family values.
Yeah.
Parents need to know how to protect their kids from that. And I think Because Family is doing a great job of making sure that happens and getting the word out there. And I was just glad to help you out in any way to get that message out there. And I think we're going to do that in a little bit more proactive way here coming up.
Yeah. As I said, you're going to be joining Because Family and basically giving Because Family a presence in the Northeast. And that's going to be really exciting for us. It's part of the greater vision we've had for Because Family anyway. And you approached me about this and said, hey, I want to be involved in a greater way. And I was thinking like maybe he wants to help like edit podcasts or help like, write a blog post here and there, which is also going to be something that I'd love for you to do. But not edit my podcast. I'll do that, I guess. But you're like, I got to edit my own. But yeah, I was thrilled when you said what you said, because I'm it's something that's been in my heart forever, that I don't have to be all over the country if there's people passionate about this who can be Because Family in those areas. So tell us about, just briefly, how you came to the idea of doing this in this way.
Well, like I said, it's something that I've been pretty passionate about. I've spoken about it at homeschooling conferences before. I've spoken about it at my church and with other homeschooling groups about it. And because I'm raising kids and I'm in the middle of it, it's something that's important to me. And I really feel like, especially here in the Northeast, I think the word is getting out there, but I still really see, specifically in churches, I see parents that just don't realize what they're allowing their kids to have access to when they give them a smartphone. And they're not even doing basic things like turning on parental controls on a device.
Yeah, the built-in stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
The built-in stuff. Much less saying, I need to pay attention to the content that my kids are consuming. If you'll allow me to go off on a tangent for a moment.
I will.
I learned about this Instagram account. It's a 9-year-old. Her name is Little Tay. And she runs around like one of these gangster rappers, flashing $100 bills and cussing. And so there's a parent out there somewhere, presumably, that is allowing their child to do this. And so if you have a child who has an Instagram account, maybe they're 13, maybe they're old enough to have an Instagram account. These are the kind of things that they're seeing. They're seeing
Right.
kids their age doing these kinds of things, and it's going to impact them, especially if they're spending most of their time around kids who don't share their values. It's going to rub off. It's just a question of how much it's going to rub off, and what can parents do to mitigate that. And so I really feel like here in the Northeast, I just want to get the word out, mostly to churches, but if some schools will have me, if some homeschooling groups will have me, I want to get the word that Because Family is sharing the message that they have. I want to spread that up here in the Northeast. And I really think that, we see a lot of ministries that I think are limited because they feel like, well, this ministry is so-and-so, right? It's a name.
Right.
It's Michael Prince Ministries,
right,
instead
exactly.
of Because Family Ministries. And so you're limiting that because Michael Prince can only be in so many places at one time.
Exactly.
Whereas if you have a ministry that's overarching, saying, hey, this is Because Family Ministry, and we have people around the country that can come into your church and share this message and share this information with you, I think that's a much broader scope. And I think it allows a ministry to be more influential, because they're not concerned with growing a personality, but more of growing a message.
Absolutely.
And so that's hopefully what I can do here in the Northeast.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And we talked a little bit about kind of changing the other podcast that Because Family does, which is the Family Tech Update podcast, and you joining me when we do those episodes. Those episodes are not on a strict schedule. It's more based on the content we have to do them, and my time as being a dad and husband is always first for me.
Right.
But I think that's going to be a lot of fun to have you on the show to talk with me about some of these topics. And what do you expect? And this may be kind of I don't know. Sometimes I hear interviewers ask questions, and I'm like, really, that question? And this might be one of those. But what do you hope to bring to the Family Tech Update podcast? As we discuss not only, and I'll let you answer, and then I'll tell you what I'm excited about you bringing to it. Let's see if they're the same thing.
Okay. Well, I think I'm about 10 years older than you, right?
Bam, there right? It is. Yep.
Yeah. and so I think my perspective is going to be from someone who's a little bit farther down the road than you are.
Yes.
As far as raising kids, I have older kids dealing with this. As far as how my perception on it as I get older and more crotchety,
curmudgeon.
Yeah, as I become more of a curmudgeon about it, and there's a YouTube channel that I watch called the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and they're currently going through the Sermon on the Mount. It's two people. Normally it's just one person, but it's two people discussing the Sermon on the Mount, and they're bouncing ideas off of each other. Well, what about this? Well, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Or this is how I see it, and I think that's very helpful.
I've been going through that too, actually. And very much enjoying it. Yeah,
it's a great series, and I really like the way they disagree.
Right.
Sometimes
they get in Bible fights.
But it's not to the point where no, you're wrong. It's just no, I see it differently. Than you do. And it's not things of like, well, is Jesus God or not? It's not those kinds of things, right?
Right.
It's more application type things.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're going to see it. Where we may disagree. We may say, okay, well, here's a piece of technology. So, John, would you have it in your house? Well, yeah, sure, I would have it in my house, but that's because my youngest kid is 10 years old.
Right.
And so where you necessarily may not, because you don't have kids that would be old enough and responsible enough to use that particular piece of technology.
Sure.
And that's a perspective that I think that I can offer that many of your listeners I think will benefit from.
I think so. I think it's also a perspective you can offer to just the seminars when you go to a church or somewhere to speak. To the questions you'll get, because that's the best part of these seminars that I'm finding is the Q&A section is the best part always. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And I was going to say the fact that you have older kids is just going to add a lot to the Because I don't know, I think in every Family Tech Update episode, I say several times. Now, my kids are pretty young, but, or I have to reiterate, well, I was a youth pastor for 8 years, and in that experience, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or my discussion of teenagers is mostly about neuroscience and how their brain works, and less about my experience raising any, because I have yet to. Although my 10-year-old thinks he's 15, but he's not. He can hear me. He's next door in the next room. But anyway, and I think I'm excited because you're going to be presenting Because Family's content, but you're going to be presenting it with your spin, and your stories, your experiences, and it's going to be great. Someday when we put together the big Because Family National Conference, we'll both have something to say at those things. It'll be wonderful. So,
Yeah.
That's going to be cool. So, is there anything else that you wanted to add to our conversation here as we start to move forward in this partnership, I guess?
Just that I'm excited to go out there and share this message. It's something that I've been sharing one-on-one with people, and I'm excited to use Because Family's platform to go out and get into churches and say, hey, this is something that you as a church need to be thinking about. And so I think it is going to be it'll be an adventure. It definitely will be an adventure. And it's a way that I think that I can I see this as supporting your ministry.
Absolutely.
And it I think that instead of having deep pockets, which I don't have because I have 7 kids,
right? Yeah.
This is a way that I can support Because Family by going out and sharing this message and getting it out to more people than you could on your own.
Yeah, and that's awesome, and that's great that there's not only are you out there somewhere where it's not easy for me to get to, but you have the background, the experience, and the knowledge to be a real contribution in so many ways. And so I'm grateful for you. I'm super grateful for you, just bringing this up to me and you contacting me and saying, hey, I'd like to talk about how I can be more involved with what Because Family's doing. And I was thinking, bare minimum, what can he do? That'd be great. And you're like, no, man, I want to basically partner as another, I don't know, branch, franchise. I don't know what we call it, but this is new waters for me. But tell everybody again real quick where they can stalk you on the internet and hear all your stuff.
So probably the easiest way to stalk me is on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. It's at JWILKERS is where you can find me. I don't generally friend people I don't know on Facebook, so but I will. You can follow me on Twitter. I have a public account, and thewiredhomeschool.com is where you can find out about the Wired Homeschool, and strugglingforpurpose.com is where you can find out about all the other stuff that I do that has nothing to do with homeschooling, and usually there's some weird stuff there too.
Great. Well, thanks so much again for taking some time this evening to chat with me, and for what you're doing for Because Family and for families up in the Northeast and whoever listens to the podcasts and stuff. Thanks again, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for listening to the Because Family podcast. Thank you again to John for his willingness to chat with me this evening as we recorded this interview. And thank you for watching. You can find everything about us at BecauseFamily.org, including our Facebook links and YouTube and Twitter and all the stuff. So thanks again. We'll see you next time on the Because Family podcast.